Welcome to another edition of the Best Business Minds, where we interview business leaders and academics that write thought-provoking books. I'm Marc Kramer, a serial entrepreneur who consults with family business and entrepreneurs, and currently I'm teaching entrepreneurship at Vinh University in Hanoi, Vietnam. Today's guest is Josefine Campbell, author of Power Barometer, Manage Personal Energy, Not Just Time and Money. Josephine, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. And we're so glad that you're able to speak with us, that you are in the Nordic countries, and we're thrilled to have you here. So, Josephine, let's start off with you telling us about your professional background.
Yeah, I'm an executive coach. I'm the founder of Campbell Co., a leadership development consulting firm. And we coach leaders one-on-one and in groups.
And so, how did you become a coach?
I'm driven from the desire to make an impact. I truly believe that each and every one of us, we can have a positive impact with our life. Very few people can change the world, just one person, but all of us can have a positive impact. And I used to be a consultant in strategy and innovation. I also used to be an entrepreneur. And I found when doing traditional consulting work, you just deliver a slide deck of PowerPoints and people might be really happy. You know, your customers might be really happy for the work you've done. But I find that there's a limited effect to traditional consulting work compared to coaching. And at some point also realized that I actually already started coaching my clients when doing innovation projects, for example. I would be coaching them. So the step from moving from strategy and innovation into leadership development was quite small. And I'm still working with the same type of people. We mainly work with leaders in multinational corporations like Deloitte and McDonald's and Novo Nordisk and Maersk, and so it's large, complex organizations. And I always work with this type of organizations and leader, and I like it. It's interesting. It's really, really interesting. The level of complexity is high.
So before we get into your book, you were a jiu-jitsu champion in your country. What did jiu-jitsu teach you that you've applied to business?
Yeah, so it's a good question you asked me. And you know, I used to also, just like you're teaching at the university, I used to teach at Copenhagen Business School. And I had all this academic expertise on leadership plus a lot of practical experience. And then once I started coaching, trying to make this impact, trying to make a difference, helping people with whatever they wanted, I found when I took some of the techniques that we used in jiu-jitsu, either to prepare ourselves for a battle or to manage our mind and energy level while in a battle, and adjusted them just a little bit to fit modern work life, which sometimes can feel like being in a battle, right? A lot of uncertainty. Sometimes you feel like you get some punches. Sometimes you just interpretate things in a way where it feels like you're being attacked. Maybe you're not, but it's the same thing happening inside the mind. So when I took those techniques from the Japanese martial art of jiu-jitsu and tweaked them a little bit, made them practical, they had an immense effect. So those techniques have become part of our training program, and I've used them many, many, many times with leaders in practice. And what you can read in the book, Power Barometer, is those experiences. It's the experiences of leaders using those techniques, applying them in a work life which is full of pressure and unpredictable circumstances.
I understand in that sport, I mean, at a level that you were at, that it's not the physical, it's more the mental, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, your mind has to be moving like a chess master, 3, 4 steps
Mhm.
ahead. I mean, you're trying to set somebody up. Do you end up thinking that way in business? And when you're coaching people, telling them how to think, many steps ahead and look at things in different ways?
Yes, but that's also another tactical or strategic way of thinking that is equal in coaching and in martial art. You pick up little cues along the way and you keep them in mind. So you can, for example, as a martial artist, you will pick up a certain fighting style that your opponent has, and you might not use it instantly, but you apply it at the right moment. The same thing in coaching. If someone is speaking and what they are speaking is having some effect for them, and if they're on a good path, I don't want to interrupt them. I want to let them speak, but they might say something as they're speaking for a long time, which would be worthwhile asking a question about, going deeper. So I'll keep that in mind and I'll save that for later. Or there's been something 3 sessions back or in the first session, or, so it's like you get those cues and you pick them up and you use them at the right time. That's also why agility is so important. Agility is a term that we have used in sports for a long time and has just been used in business for a couple of decades. But it's about having that agile mind. And to be agile also means to apply things in the right moment, at the right pace, with the right pressure or the right speed.
That's what I teach at one of the things I teach at Vin University here is agile innovation. So before I open up to, there's a question from the audience, but before I do that, I'd like to know, why did you write this book?
You know, it's about sharing and sharing good stuff that I believe can have an impact and help people. So that's why I wrote it. Even though you sell a lot of business books, it's not something you make a lot of money on. So it's something you do because you really feel like you want to do it. And I think these techniques are valuable. Also, honestly, Mark, in leadership literature, I've been teaching leadership for plus 10 years. So I know a lot of leadership literature. And sometimes I get sick by how technical it all is. Not that I don't like technical stuff, it's just that it doesn't work in practice. It's like, why didn't anybody go deeper? Why didn't anybody try to understand what happens behind that behavior, which is being described in so many different models and frameworks and techniques and blah, blah, blah. Leadership is personal, and you have to go deep inside a person to get to the bottom of why we're having that behavior and how to manage it.
That's very interesting you said. So I'm going to circle back, but I always let the audience answer their questions. We have a question from the audience. It says, which do you prefer, one of one or one of many to many coaching? Do you prefer to be one-on-one, or do you coach a lot? And from a strategic perspective, how do you scale a coaching business?
Okay, wonderful question. So I like one-on-one and one-to-many equally, but I think if you go beyond like 22 people, it's too many to have that intimacy. So what makes the difference for me is the duration and the depth of the work. I prefer to work with people for a longer time than for a short time. Definitely, because change and development does take time, because people have to adjust and try things in practice. It's all about what happens in between the sessions, what they try in practice, the takeaways they have from the sessions. And the more interactions you have, they don't have to be long, but the more interactions you have, the more opportunities there are to bring something into practice, try it out, and make a real change. So that's how I see the difference. The level of impact, that's what matters to me. And the other question was
to scale up the business, because when you're coaching,
yeah.
how many,
Yeah.
pupils can you take?
Yes, that is a good question, because my day just have 24 hours like anyone else. I have a wonderful employee, but Gita, and we do a lot of the groups together. It's really good to be two. And she also does 101, but I don't have ambitions about doing a large consultancy with a lot of coaches that I have employed. It's not how I want to scale my business. After the summer, we will be launching a digital coaching service. And part of it will be an AI coach that we already developed. And if you go to my website, you can actually try it for without any cost, because it's new. So we're just letting people use it, but we're going to implement it into a service where we will also be present, Gita and I. We will also facilitate. I will also be there in person, digitally, but I will be there. So
how are you using AI in your business?
Not so much yet, but most of the people that Gita and I coach, they are leaders who already proven themselves. Like they're on a either director or VP or SVP level in large corporations, or they are MDs or general managers. And you know what, if you look at the leadership levels below, or people who are just aspiring to be leaders, they actually also need leadership coaching. And it's not always they get the budget for a high-end qualified coach, but they actually really need it, and a lot of people really want it. So I trained an AI, I feeded it with everything I wrote, I gave it instructions. It's not like using ChatGPT, but still, of course, it's not like talking to me or Gita yet, but I think maybe one day it will be really good. And people who I had like really qualified vice presidents who are excellent leaders try it, and they are quite positive about the quality of the response that it gives. But still, it's more like you can get some inspiration, and then you have to feed it with your contextual information, because that it doesn't know beforehand, and you can get pretty good answers. So right now we're just giving it away for free for the technology to mature and for people to benefit. And we hope if you try it that you will give us some feedback. We'd love to hear what you think.
Another question from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
While Bruce Lee was not jujitsu, he did kung fu.
Yeah.
I think he also did everything, actually, from reading
He
the
was
book
amazing.
about him. Do you like his philosophies? They're often quoted.
Yeah. Yes, I'm a big fan. It sounds like you know his philosophies. I think a lot of people are missing out by not knowing the depth and the brilliance of that man. I am very inspired by his mind like water metaphor.
Yes.
Which I know if you know David Allen, the productivity coach, it's basically the point of his work too is to have a mind like water. And you could draw parallels between the concept of mind like water and the green box in my matrix in the book, which I call mental agility. So the book is structured around a matrix that has 4 squares, and the upper right quadrant, the dark green one, the one where you want to be, it's agility. And that's basically mind like water. Just like Bruce Lee, from his master, he says, he talks about how more water transforms. So if it's into a pot, it has the shape of a pot. If you pull it out, if you pour the water from the pot into a teacup, it will get the shape of a teacup. That is agility.
I think one of the things I liked about Bruce Lee from reading about him was that he never minded losing. Like he had a very big ego and he rarely ever lost. But if he lost, he wasn't broken. He learned from the other person. And when he beat the other person, he offered them to teach them how he beat them. And nobody was doing that at that time. And no master would ever share the inside strength that they had, but he was always wanting to do them. He was a master teacher, always wanting to teach people new things. So I thought that was very interesting about Bruce Lee. You talk about the importance of managing personal energy for better performance. Can you elaborate on some specific strategies that leaders can use to manage their energy levels throughout the workday? Because I think, entrepreneurs like myself are typically working 12 to 16 hours a day. I only sleep 5 hours.
Yeah, I can definitely give you some strategies. And, even when sleeping just 5 hours was definitely, for 96% of all human beings, it's not enough with 5 hours, nor 6. We all need 7.5 to 8.5 hours of sleep, unless you are among those 4%. But so sleeping longer is one strategy. Another one, which is recommendable even though you sleep the amount of hours that you need, is to do some micro breaks. Little breaks throughout the day where you're not doing anything. Equals you're not looking at a screen, you're not talking with anybody. You can be walking, you can be laying down, you can be sitting. Some people like to close their eyes, but you're relaxing for a minute or 5 minutes, let go. And we have so much substantial evidence from science showing the effects of it. One example is a study that Microsoft released just after the pandemic. Maybe you saw it, the Human Factors Lab, where did you see those brain scans of people's brains?
No, I don't remember.
Okay, it's fascinating. So they had a group of people, and on one Monday they let them do back-to-back meetings, and they were wearing brain sensors on the brain, EEG. And 2 weeks after, they did the similar day and similar measure, but instead of having back-to-back meetings, they would have meetings of 50 minutes, and then they would do 10 minutes of meditation. Closed eyes, not looking at anything, not doing anything, just breathing and relaxing. And on the set from the first Monday, you can see how the brain turns from blue greenish in the morning to red, like with big red marks in the afternoon. On the other set of images from the day where they took the breaks, the brain scans still look nice, green, bluish throughout the day. And not a lot of people can do 10 minutes of meditation every time they work for 50 minutes. If you can, it's absolutely wonderful. But if you can't, even just 1 minute makes a difference. That's always what I tell people. It's the same thing with feedback. Rather than not giving feedback, if you don't have time to do these 30 minutes one-on-one meetings, just looking at people, being present, and giving them honest feedback connected to them, so you can actually sense how they're receiving it. And if they get you for 1 minute, it's much better than doing nothing. And if there's one thing that people don't have enough of, it's time. So I'm a big fan of doing micro breaks, micro feedback, just a little bit. It has an effect.
What's your definition of a leader?
A leader is something that everybody can be. A leader is someone who takes responsibility for oneself and for others. And then you have formal leaders. That's something else. You have a lot of formal leaders in high positions who are not behaving like a real leader. You know what I heard about the other day?
Go ahead.
An executive team who have a top manager. So he's the big boss of the whole thing. It's a rather big company. And they did an engagement survey, and it shows clearly that this top guy, he's not very popular. And he just looked at the group and said, hey, but you're the top level, so you have to fix this. Like his behavior, his own behavior. He asked his leadership team to take responsibility and fix his own bad behavior. That is just so poor. That is not a leader. Not taking responsibility for yourself and the impact you have on other people.
Well, we won't get into the politics of some of the world leaders and how they don't show real leadership around the globe.
Why not? We could.
Yeah, that's very controversial in the U.S. And I have my own thoughts on that. Who are some of the leaders when you observe them? You say, God, they're really good leaders of people, that they really get the most out of people. Who would you say they are?
I would point a lot of people who you wouldn't know if I shared your names with them. There are so many great leaders in the world who don't make a big fuss about themselves, who are not famous, who take responsibility and do everything they can, and who try to cater and give service to their people for them to perform and do their best. And actually, I know so many of them. I coach quite a lot of them, and I'm sure that there are many more in the world. So it's not an unusual phenomenon. They're just, quiet everyday heroes.
But some of the ones who everybody looks up to, and most of them are American because the American companies are so big, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. And when you hear their people talk about them, they talk about their ability to stretch people, but they also talk about the nasty side of these people. That I have a guest on my show who worked directly for Bill Gates for 12 years and said that you always had to check what his mood was before you told him anything. And I'm thinking, oh my God, Bill Gates, really? I mean, that's what we had to do. This guy who was the richest man in the world for a very long time. And we know, when Steve Ballmer was head of Microsoft, it was literally a lost decade because he wasn't a good leader during that time. And Steve Jobs, without Tim Cook and Steve Wozniak, you never would have heard of him, even though he was brilliant in the product, but he wasn't good at getting the most out of people. He stretched them in a way, but his style also was very hard on people. And Elon Musk, I'm reading the book on Walter Isaacson. Why are those folks, how did they manage to succeed in spite of that lack of skill in terms of leading people?
Yeah, they're all geniuses in their way. They all have very, very high IQs. It's undiscussable that they have created great results. I would be curious to see what could they achieve with great leadership.
How much more further could they go with it?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Your concept of middle management is mentioned as a challenging position for energy levels. Can you share some specific examples of how middle managers can navigate complex situations and constant change while maintaining their energy?
Yeah. So it is complex because you are subject for pressure from all sides in some situations. And hopefully you have some safe zones also, at least in one direction. Managing your energy level in complex situation is not like a quick fix. It's a strategy that you work on for a long time. So you need to understand what gives you energy and what takes your energy. And it's just like a bank account. You have an energy account. You have to make sure that you're not in a deficit. Don't spend money you don't have. Don't spend energy you don't have. And make sure you have some deposits, that you make the energy breed more energy, just like you want your money to breed more money. So, never go too low. That's what the power barometer is about. It's a barometer that measures the level of your energy that you can use to do check-in, so you're aware of your energy level. So being aware and catering to it over time is a key. It will be individual what gives you energy.
Mm-hmm. You talked about the concept of awareness matrix, and you started to talk about the matrix in your book, but didn't go into detail. Can you elaborate on different quadrants of the matrix and how it can be used to manage energy levels?
Yes, certainly. So the awareness matrix has two axes. The one is personal energy, and the other is mental stages, whether you are ready or hijacked. It basically means whether it is your amygdala that is whether it's activated and you're in fight flight response, and that can even be very subtle, or whether you are more relaxed and you don't have the sympathetic nerve system activated, but you can be more agile when you are ready, right? So there are four quadrants in the matrix, and the upper right quadrant, where you have high energy and you're ready, it's where we want to be. It's the mental agility. In that state of mind, you have an increased ability to see things from different perspectives if you are curious, if you're open-minded. You have the ability to be open-minded if you want to be that. You are better at creating solutions as you are better at your analytical skills. You're better at being creative. You are better at thinking logically. You're better at problem solving. And you have a higher level of empathy. If you are on the other side, in the red zone of the matrix, in the upper left quadrant, you are in the state that I call narrow. So it means you're still high on energy, but you are hijacked. Sometimes that state of mind is being referred to as super focused. It's this state of mind where it's a little bit annoying if someone else has a question or a different perspective, because you just want to get to where you want to go. And basically it's an alarm state of mind. It's you get tunnel vision, and it's like the ear stops working. So it's not always a constructive state of mind. It's being too celebrated in too many contexts in business culture. And it wears you out. It's training to be in that left side of the quadrant, in the red side of the quadrant. I just want to stress the fact that having a high level of energy doesn't mean that you're like super high, euphoric, that you're fast. You can be very calm and grounded with a high level of energy. High level of energy just means you have the resources to do what you want to do. If we move to the...
Go ahead.
And if we move to the lower part of the matrix, in the left side, we have the state of mind that I refer to as fragile. It's in the red zone. You're hijacked and your level of energy is low. It's where people who are suffering from severe stress, they have been there too much for too long. Some people live and work there in that quadrant and experience life from the quadrant of being fragile for months or even years. It wears you out, makes you sick, and at the end, people get a breakdown or depression if they don't get out of it. You can also be in that state of mind just momentarily, as any other state of mind in the quadrant, in the matrix. But it's definitely the one where we want to avoid being ourselves. And if we see other people there, it would be good to help them out of it. And then in the right side of the matrix, in the lower right quadrant, you have a state of mind that I call mellow. You're ready, so your mind can be completely open. You can be ready for whatever comes, but you don't have a lot of energy. So you're mellow. You know that feeling where you actually feel well and you're open-minded and you're quite flexible, but you just feel like leaning backwards and taking it easy, at least if you listen to your body, to its energy levels. So it's perfectly fine. You know, tonight and last night, I was super mellow. I get up 6 a.m. in the morning. I have a long day, active life. I have kids, I have work, I have so many things I do. It's natural and normal that I spend my energy, even though I do my breaks. And then at the end of the day, I'm lower on energy. So I get into the mellow state of mind. And then what you got to do when you're low on energy? You recharge. So I sleep. And
Yeah,
I don't compromise on getting my hours.
my day starts at 5:30 in the morning, and I get up,
Mhm.
read for half an hour, then I work out for an hour, and then proceed with the rest of my work day, and then work till like between 11 and 12 o'clock at night, read some more, and it starts over. So I sleep 5.5 hours, but I feel fully energized because
Mhm.
I'm a super deep sleeper, like scary deep,
Mm,
that you could run a
mm,
car through and I wouldn't hear it coming through. So I think
mhm.
I'm fully rested. That's why I don't need as many
Yeah,
hours. Here's
yeah,
a
could
question
be.
from the audience. Jiu-jitsu does involve tactical misdirection to obtain the position you want. How can we use misdirection or other jiu-jitsu strategies in a positive way in business?
Yeah, well, misdirection, I it's not one I've brought into business life from. It's true, you do that in jiu-jitsu. But other techniques, you know, there's one that any athlete knows, like not just jiu-jitsu. For example, if you go run for a marathon, what would you do the day before to prepare? What would any good athlete who runs a marathon do the day before the marathon?
Sleep and relax?
Yep. And what would they do afterwards?
Also,
Yeah.
relax.
And yeah, exactly. So that's one strategy. But I imagine that the person who asked the question was referring to during battles.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So I'll give you another one. So in jiu-jitsu, we we do a little meditation before we start practicing to turn our awareness on the space we have inside, our inside. And my sensei taught me to be aware of my breath while I was fighting, while I was in a battle, because if my breath started getting more superficial, I was probably sliding into what I now will refer to as the red zone, to being hijacked. So it's about, even though you are fighting, it's about keeping these long, deep, keeping a deep breathing that keeps your nerve system calm. Does that make sense? That's the
Yeah.
that's the that's the difference between someone who is just feisty and a master. Just like Mr. Miyagi from the Karate Kid movie. Like
Yes.
he would never be feisty, right?
Right.
He would always
Another,
have that calmness. Mhm.
another question from the audience. Decision making is very energy consuming process and leaders are left to do this job. So how
Mm.
leaders should ration their energy when it comes to decision making?
Good question. Don't make important decisions when you are tired or upset or in the red zone or feel fragile. Wait until next morning. Make difficult decisions when you have the energy level. For example, if you feel rested in the morning, like you, Mark, it's a good time to make decisions and do complex tasks. Be aware of your energy level and and your state of mind, and then match that with the type of task you need to do.
Um, you talked a little bit about this, but you have this example of a woman named Stephanie in your book. And you mentioned Stephanie using chanting as a tool to manage her energy. Can you share any other specific examples of practices or tools that readers can implement to improve their own energy management?
Yes, yes. So another thing that Stephanie does, and also with her team, is that they have promised each other to be aware of the energy level in the meeting, in the room, when they're working together. And we all know the feeling of leaving a meeting completely drained, or being in a meeting where we just feel drained. And they promised each other not to do that to each other. So, for example, if they can feel that, they will do something. Could be doing a walk and talk instead of sitting at the table. It could be that they do 1 minute silence. It could be they do a breathing exercise. And you can do that alone, or you can do that together. The reason why I gave the example of doing it together with your team is it's much easier to do it with other people. And when you start doing it with other people, they will also support you, and it will have a positive effect that is spiraling into the organization. I have to share that Stephanie, she was managing 30 people when we did the case. Today, she's an equity partner. And her department was the department with the highest customer satisfaction. And of course, that also affects the results. And plus on that, she had the highest employee engagement, lowest employee turnover. It's, if you can talk to some of your people and do it together with them, do it, definitely. Stephanie could not talk to all her people. She chose talent. She told people who were open to this. So you just pick a couple of people who will be with you. It's not about breaking down the barriers and convince other people. It's go with the flow.
Do you, by identifying those people, and those people are successful, people want to copy people who are successful.
Exactly.
Is that how you get others to follow along, is picking the ones who will embrace it? Because the people in the beginning will not embrace it. You're just wasting your time, just like customers that you're trying to convince they should buy your service or your product. If they're super resistant, you're just wasting time.
Yeah, so true. Yes, it's the same thing.
You mentioned you have this concept of plus and minus list, which I think is interesting. Can you share some examples of surprising things that people have discovered about their energy sources and drains through this exercise?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they would be surprising to you. And they were not surprising to me, but what matters is that they were surprising to them. And a lot of, when we do the plus and minus list, a lot of people get an epiphany. We get to the bottom of the list where they have to write down the effect of they have on people around them when they're low on energy. And for some people, it really sparks a new direction. Whether, for example, and I don't know if this is surprising. It's very simple and very practical, but it made a huge difference for these people. One person decided to stay in his car in the driveway when he arrives at home and just spend 10 minutes alone in the car, which I know is a safe space for a lot of people, with closed eyes, relaxing, letting go of the day. So he wouldn't walk in, bringing all the stress and the high pace and his trouble and into the family, which is his home is a sacred space to him. So just taking those 10 minutes made a huge difference for him. And then you can say, oh, you're so busy and you're already in a hurry. But actually he's saving a lot of time from misunderstandings and his family getting him wrong, or he getting his family wrong. And it's creating a positive spiral for him to take those 10 minutes. It's not, it's not very complicated or exotic or surprising, but it's something that works.
You mentioned collaborating in a healthy versus toxic culture impacting energy
Mm.
levels. Can you give
Oh my God, yeah.
specific examples of how these cultural differences play out in the workplace?
The cultural difference between toxic and healthy work culture.
Well, examples of how these cultural differences, because if you're in a collaborative,
Oh,
healthy environment,
mm-hmm.
people's energy is higher, right? But in a
Yeah,
toxic culture, I mean, just the word itself already tells you it's bad. But how much a difference are we talking about here?
huge. In a toxic culture, people have to spend so much energy on protecting themselves. And for a lot of people, just thinking about work is draining them. In a healthy, collaborative culture where people can feel they're part of something, that they belong, that they can do meaningful work, that what they do matters somehow to some people, and where they can speak openly and be themselves, they can get energy from working. I get energy from working. I absolutely love my work. Mm.
Yeah, no, I feel the same. The
Mm.
SCARF model, can you explain the SCARF model? And it identifies fairness as a trigger for feeling hijacked. Can you elaborate
Mm.
on how cultural differences might influence what people perceive as fair treatment in a workplace?
Mm. Yeah, definitely. The SCARF model is it's created by David Rock from Neuro Leadership Institute, and I'm referring to it in the book. Um, it has 5 trigger points, which are status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness to others, and fairness. So they are trigger points, like source points that potentially can hijack you if they get activated. So basically, the pain, the perception that hijacks you is already inside you. And it's just that you see something or you meet something that reminds you of that past lived experience. And now we're actually capable of measuring that, doing brain scannings to see those activations. And if we all have those 5 trigger points, some more than others. And the fifth one, the fairness that you ask about, is the most tricky one, because justice feels like it's universal, doesn't it? But
Well,
really, it's not. It's subjective. What we perceive as being fair is very, very subjective. So even people who are born and raised and live and breathe in the same culture, who looks very much like each other, they can have different perspective on a situation where one will find one thing fair and the other person will find something else fair. It really depends on which glasses you see through, the perspective you see things, what shoes you're in. And then if you come from different cultures, work cultures or national cultures or company cultures, whatever, different cultures, you are prone with different filters, different set of glasses that you see the world through. So you would look even more different. You might look more differently on what is fair in one situation or the other, the more different you are. You don't have to, but it could be. It takes more from us to put ourselves in the shoes of others who are different from us than people who appear to be the same. Even though we could also go really, really wrong if we feel someone is just the same as us and they're not. Then we think they will feel us or think how we will, even though they won't.
Are there situations where fight or flight response might actually be beneficial? For instance, could a surge of adrenaline help with a challenging presentation?
Yeah, if it's the best you can do, sure. For people who needs that kick to do it, it's better than not getting the energy. But There's always the better alternative of being in the agile state of mind. I would say, like, for women who cannot fight, but who would fight if they get into the right quadrant, it's positive. You know, like if women are being assaulted, we know that 3 out of 4, they get free if they really fight for it, if they shout, if they scream, if they punch, if they, you know, do everything they can. So in a situation like that, yeah, certainly, if you don't freeze, and most women do freeze, and that's the problem. But if you're prone to fight, yeah.
You said that the key to avoid hijacked states of awareness. Are there any recommended exercises or practices to improve self-awareness besides attending to bodily signals?
Being curious. Being curious about how other people see you. Ask for feedback. It can be, you know, micro feedback, just a minute. It can be verbally, it can be in written, it can be deep 360 surveys where all your peers and employees and your bosses are being asked about how they perceive you in a lot of different parameters. Be open to that other people will misunderstand you, that they might not get you, and be curious about how they will see you and how they will interpretate your behavior and actions, knowingly that they might get you wrong, and be okay about that. And also be okay about that not everybody will get you or see you. It's just how it is. Yeah.
How do you handle, let's say you love your job and now you've
Mm-hmm.
inherited a boss who's nasty, who's a bully. How do you go and handle that person when you've loved that job? Is there a way around it, or it's just, you know what, you're stuck with them and if you can't live with them, you gotta leave?
Well, there is a way around it, and that's what my next book is about. It's coming out on November 5th. So I will be
We'll
happy
bring you
to come
back.
back to the show. Yeah, it's called 12 Tools for Managing a Selfish Leader. And the subtitle is Unlock Authenticity for Resilience. So it's the next book.
Then I guess we'll have to save that question for that next book.
Mhm.
You mentioned psychological safety as a key to open leadership. Can you elaborate on ways for leaders to create psychologically safe environment for their teams?
Yes. Um, there are a lot of different things you have to do to create a psychologically safe environment. Basically, people need to be able to feel that they can ask questions, that they can do some kinds of errors, that they know what good looks like. Amy Edmondson, who wrote the book Fearless Organization, she has a wonderful little tool. She calls it the Leader's Toolbox. And she puts clarity, I think, or like setting expectations as the first step. And I think she's very right on that. She also done some wonderful book, and she's written some wonderful work, and she's written a whole book about being able to talk about errors and differentiating between different types of errors. So there's some type of errors that you do want to avoid, and you also can expect that people should not do. And it's okay that those errors are not okay to do. It's the type of errors that we could anticipate, where we have a process that should be followed to avoid these, and it hasn't been followed. And then there are what she calls the complex errors. Something changed. You followed the process, you did what you were supposed to do, what you normally do, but something in the environment had changed, so some mistake happened. Those we just have to learn from. And then there are the experiments. the ones the intelligent errors, where we want people to take some chances and be innovative and might fail, because you could also risk, or you could also achieve something big by taking this risk and failing. So having this nuanced perspective on failure and making mistakes is super important in psychological safety. And it's very difficult for people in practice. I find that it's when I bring this up, when we do leadership development sessions, it's always something that a lot of people have a lot of questions about, and we have a lot of good discussions about it. Amy Edmondson probably had the same experience, and that's probably why she wrote a whole book on the topic. And I think also giving candid feedback, being not wrapping things up too much, but actually saying if something is wrong, gives people psychological safety, because it's not nice when you don't know what people really feel and think, especially if it's your manager. You rather want them to tell you that what you did sucked, but they believe in you and they got your back and
Right.
will help you to do the better next time, right? Then not saying it, and you can feel like they lost faith in you, but you don't know what happened. That's terrible. And then there's one more aspect, which is like in another framework. It's about being able to feel that person, the other people. If you're in a workplace where everybody behaves like robots, where you cannot really feel people, where you don't know what they're really thinking or feeling, and having feelings at work is not accepted, though people do bring feelings to work. It might be in a little box hidden away, but they're there, right?
Yeah.
So if you cannot emotionally relate to someone else, a lot of people feel unsafe around them because they don't know why they have them. They don't know how to relate to them. So it's psychological safety requires a set of different factors to be present.
How about, during the pandemic and afterwards, and this is all switching again now, people wanted to continue to work from home. It's funny, during the pandemic, people were having psychological breakdowns from not interacting with people. But there was a significant group of people that said, you know what, I like working from home. I can take care of my kids, elderly parents. I don't have to travel to work, whatever. But now to lead people, how do you see it going back to the office? People going back to the office, because how do you create corporate culture if people aren't seeing each other every day and getting to know each other and even understanding how different people work? Because if they're all working from computers from at home and you're only seeing for the occasional Zoom meeting, how does that work?
What you need to do is manage energy, not just time and money. So if you know what gives and takes energy from people, and you can include that in how you organize work, the conversations you're having, and they can actually feel energized from work, or at least like work is not draining them, or they matter as people, they can feel this sense of belonging. If you work in a team where you have energy when you're together, you feel like you belong there, regardless of time and place. And honestly, I think getting people back to the office, it's a fight that you're gonna lose at the end. Maybe people will win it momentarily, and it is easier for managers just to glance over the desk and see that everybody are working, and even to get a sense of how they're feeling. Hybrid work or long distance work it requires more hours of managing and leading people. It does.
I just read in the Wall Street Journal this week that people end up in more hours when they're remote than they ever did when they were in the actual office. That they said that they're actually, some people are saying that they're getting less done because more meetings are being called because of that. And I wonder, or has leadership changed because of the internet and people knowing that when I'm 63, so when I was in my 20s, you only had the jobs that were within drive time of you. So the leadership had more control over things because they knew you had only so many options. Then in the 90s, when the internet came, you had more options because you could work longer distance. And now people are working on a global basis. You're in Denmark and you easily can work for somebody in Los Angeles. So any Denmark employer has to treat you well. If not, you just take a job anywhere in the world without even leaving Denmark. So how has that changed leadership styles?
We are moving from a paradigm of control to a paradigm of reciprocity. And that's also why energy is such an important factor in leadership. We know that if you try to control people working long distance by monitoring their screens, it lowers productivity. There's so much evidence on it. So you have to get people motivated and compliant in a different way than by controlling them. And caring for them in a way where you at least want them to have quality of life, giving them autonomy to the extent that they can actually deliver and manage well. And many other ways of doing more modern leadership will help you on that path.
The younger generation, this is the last question, the younger generation, and my daughter has her own global business, but on Friday, when she stopped, she stopped. Saturday and Sunday is theirs. And she works 12 hours a day during the week, but during the weekend, she feels like I need to have that work-life balance. And you hear a lot of people under the age of 35 talk about this constant need for work-life balance. How realistic is that today when people can go 24/7 and there's almost an expectation that you're dealing with people around the world and competition is so great that people end up working on weekends? So what do you recommend your leaders do about this need that people perceive and do need the work-life balance?
I recommend that the leaders don't work during the weekends. If they do, they will schedule the emails to send Monday morning, and they will let their people have the weekends. In the long run, they're going to have a more productive, more loyal workforce.
Well, Josefine, I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us. I'm looking forward to your next book, and I'm glad you're coming out with the next book. And when that comes out, let us know so we can schedule you in again. And I want to thank everybody for coming this week, and I look forward to seeing you all next Friday as well. Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend.